Hello and welcome back with Dayna and Dayna for Divine Ethereal Beings. I'm not sure what episode we're on, but today we are going to discuss alignment and all sorts of good stuff around that. So to begin with, we're gonna just like what is alignment? What does it mean to be aligned? Like what the heck is this word and what are we talking about? So do you want to, I actually want to look up the definition real quick. Do
I
you
was
want to?
just gonna say, why don't you actually look up what the definition of alignment is? Because it's always interesting when you start to actually break down the words of it as well. So yeah, please do. I think we're on episode 11 now that we're thinking about this, but alignment is it can be taken in a lot of different contexts too, just like all words can. But alignment for myself and understanding more of what it was after I started to understand my own connections, that's what it was. Alignment was connection with my higher self and into a feeling of knowing, okay, this feels good. This must be my alignment more so with my higher self than my ego trying to take over and say, well, we need these things to feel good. So alignment came from this true neutral space that most of us don't think should be neutral. A lot of people feel like alignment should be this deep excitement about like going off the rockers, exciting feeling. And that's not usually how it necessarily comes through. Your excitement will lead you to alignment, but alignment is, for myself particularly, more of that neutral space and calm and peace and knowing, oh, this feels good. My body's relaxed here. My body's feeling better. It's more peaceful. It seems to be more at ease. I just feel better making some of those hard decisions, like leaving my full-time job to start my own business. That was terrifying at first, but my excitement led me to make that decision. And once I actually made that decision, boy, did my body feel better. It was like a weight came off my shoulders, right? I was like, wow, this is where I'm actually supposed to be. This is alignment with higher self.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's spot on, right? So like Merriam-Webster is the act of aligning or state of being aligned, a forming in line, the line thus formed, the ground plan as of a railroad or highway in distinction from the profile, an arrangement of groups or forces in relation to one another. So yeah, it's like the process of aligning your thoughts, words, and actions to your highest truth is what you're saying. So, like, I think, like, I always talk to people, like, when we're operating, like, energetically, we want to be in a state of vertical alignment. So, that's grounded with the center of the earth and connected to our higher self, our source, our truth. And that's like for our human mind, we can visualize that straight line. And that is also then that center point, that peace point, that equilibrium point. And like that, yeah, like bringing that truth back in and down, that higher truth. And I would say it literally feels like that too. Like when you're going around and you're feeling like you're being tossed left and right and in chaos and everything else, like you're out of alignment. There's so many indicators for being aligned or not being aligned. But ultimately, it's like, yeah, just being in that alignment with your higher truth. And I feel like ultimately that's all of us want. Like that leads to happiness. It leads to, like you said, excitement. It leads to that kind of juicy, blissful, loving expansion and all the kind of like higher frequency emotions, like, authenticity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing they kept showing me was, the cross that many of us just instantly go to religion from. But the cross actually was not necessarily an actual cross in the way we see it. On somebody's necklace hanging over the chest, it's meant to actually be sideways. And it's like the as above, so below, as within, so without. And that's the true representation of a cross. And that is true alignment, as above, so below. And so if you can get into that space where you feel that, everything starts to fall into place a little bit more too. And the instant I keep thinking about this is like the biggest thing I think I find when you feel as though you found that alignment is the clarity that comes. It's just like things are no longer foggy. It's just like you can make decisions in that moment and know that that's right for you without overthinking it, without being like, I got to go home and think about this. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this yet. I need some time. When you're in alignment, you don't really need time because it's just right there. It's just your truth is coming in, it's dropping in. Now, the only times, obviously, well, not the only times, we know that we're not always going to stay in alignment because we got this thing called the ego, and we got these filters and these things and these perspectives that sometimes bump us around. And yet, this is probably just the easiest way of us explaining what alignment feels like. So that way, you know, now, if you know what it feels like, you can always find it again. It's kind of, instead of stabbing into the haystack looking for the needle in the dark anymore, you now have an understanding of that there's a bit of a pathway kind of laid out for your body and your feeling and emotions to be like, oh, there it is. We found it again, right? And able to come back into that alignment. It's not easy to find at first because we've never really truly been taught what it felt like. So it can be a
Right.
little like a battle of the titans sometimes at first.
Well, yeah, it's the finding it and recognizing it piece, right? It's that inspiration to be in a flow. It's that inspiration or motivation to expand into a growth experience. And you're like, holy shit, what am I doing? What is this? But it feels good. I have to follow this. And it's like, so alignment also doesn't mean that like everything's gonna be super easy and happy, joyful, and it's going to be such smooth sailing in this really like smooth road. Like, no, that's not what we're talking about. Like, that comes with as you do the work and understanding to get in and out of alignment and what that's like. However, it doesn't mean that you can bypass, say, the lessons you're here to learn as a soul, or the like, however we want to language this, right? Like, you are contracted to come here, your soul decided to come here and do specific things and certain things. And so alignment is you consciously agreeing to get on board with what that is through each experience, and trust yourself of weaving in and out of, what is this experience about? What is this challenge about? What is this obstacle about? Right? Like, and really unearthing. Really, it's about removing everything that's keeping you from alignment with your higher self and soul.
Yeah, absolutely. And learning the things you came here to learn. Like you said, it's not always going to be comfortable. And I find even for myself, when I felt this and I was in alignment, I was like, wow, this feels amazing. I could stay here. And then all of a sudden something happens where you're like, whoa, that doesn't feel so great. I don't know. Maybe I'm not on the right train, you know? Maybe I was. But the only reason why we start fighting with ourselves is because now we just got uncomfortable. And so we trying to backpedal out of it, trying to say, maybe that wasn't alignment. Maybe this was something else. But really, it is alignment because it's obviously something that you've come here wanting to learn or experience. And sometimes you have to get extremely uncomfortable to be able to even learn that and experience it and feel it in the way that the soul is being saying, hey, we came here to be in this physical body for a reason. This is part of what we want to feel, even if it's extreme intensity. You know, they keep bringing up to me is extreme loss and grief. I do find this happens to certain people sometimes where they just lose so many people in a very short amount of time. And their grief is so immense. And, you know, they're like, how could this possibly be in alignment with me? Like, how could I ever choose to want to feel this, right? To this extent of capacity where it just feels like it's just going to implode you, right? But it only feels like it's going to implode you because we choose not to feel it, right? So then it does the buildup. But you are still in alignment with what you're experiencing here because the soul is somewhat asked in a way, I'd like to know what it feels like to feel the grief, but also be able to let go of the grief and find this amazing peace and the settlement of neutrality that exists on the other side of letting go of that grief. So, you know, people think it's just like, oh, I'm just here to experience grief. Why in God's name would they want to do that? You know, and that, thinking that there's nothing else on the other side, but there always is. It's a balance. And so in alignment, you know, maybe you're feeling great and then all these people maybe start passing in your life and you're like, okay, how am I possibly in alignment with this? But you're right where you're meant to be all the time. And if it doesn't always feel like it, that's okay. But if you're noticing patterns, you know, that's a whole nother story because obviously there's something there for yourself to work through. But you're still in alignment when you feel neutrality in certain positions or things, or you get in the clarity, you know, you're getting these things from your higher self without even realizing it. But you still gotta be aware enough to know if it gets uncomfortable, don't run away because it doesn't mean you're necessarily out of alignment.
Yeah, and in addition with this thread of grief, it's like we are we will grieve things. It's not always about the loss of a human or the loss of a pet. Like it's the loss of a relationship. It's the loss of a career or a job or a whatever, right? Insert whatever. It's grief of loss of an aspect of yourself that you're letting go of or that's no longer serving you, right? There's so many layers to the grief process that really are necessary. And then, in relation to alignment, when we're talking about it involving another being, a human or a pet or whatever else, right? Like now we're talking about alignment of two separate beings, even, right? So there's more, like it's not just about then what, like, oh my gosh, am I in alignment or not, right? Like now that you have to consider, like, what was this other being's alignment? Like we so often want to make it about us, and it is always about us. And we have to remember, like, it's about them too. If you put yourself in their shoes, like then it's about them, right? So we do need to consider that in alignment and asking these questions around the experiences that we're having. And ultimately, I think we're moving into co-creating in a place where it's like, what is the highest alignment for everybody? And can we all move in one direction with that alignment along parallel paths, right? Instead of, the kind of perpendicular paths that occur.
Yeah,
So
100%. That's exactly where we are at on Earth. It's not just even just about ourselves anymore. This is happening on a collective now. And even for Dana and I, this comes up often in our work. It just came up again from the other day is, am I serving enough in a way that this is helping the human collective on an evolution of consciousness this time instead of just singularly for me and my own learning as a soul? So many intuitives, healers, whatever the hell you want to call all of us, there's plenty of people under the bridge, but we all have this part we're playing in the whole human consciousness, the consciousness of one, that we are trying to upgrade to a point where the vibration is different and it's going to affect everybody differently. It's going to allow space for other people to actually grow and expand and maybe lives that they have never been able to before in previous. So it's a beautiful thing to think about. Some people freak out a little bit about being like, what do you mean one human consciousness and collective? Well, we've all driven from somewhere, right? We may all be an individual, but we're also a collective as one. So this unity needs to come back into place. And it just feels important, for people like ourselves and including me. This actually really came up for me the other day, thinking about, am I serving in the highest good that I can, not just for myself, but for everybody else around me? And I also had this moment where they dropped in on me and said, remember, you're not asking abundance for just yourself, you're asking abundance for many. And so, in which, if you receive the abundance that you ask for, which you will, and you do, you can help just that many more people, right? And that made me feel really good because that's what I really want to do. I want to be able to help as many people as we can. And that's, again, part of why we built out the community. We want to have that space where people can come and join us and just have that sacred space to move through whatever they're looking for. You want to talk about alignment? Let's talk about alignment, right? Let's talk about your experiences. Let's talk about the things that maybe someone else might look at you in the moment that they're not understanding, or like, I'm not sure because I'm not on your level. So we want to create a level like the one human consciousness that can help wherever we can try and help.
yeah, and something that they're bringing me back around to with a couple situations here in the past few months. So situations that I've been, situations that friends have been in, clients have been in, is like when you realize, like, you have this like inspiration and this, knowing that you're in alignment to move forward with buying this house or opening this business or this relationship or doing this thing, right? It's like oftentimes those roadblocks or challenges will come up, and they're checkpoints. It doesn't mean like you're off path or don't proceed in this direction or this vision that you have. It's like, I'm just like, so my friend was, buying this house, and as you know, like so many things can come to play. She was selling 3 houses and buying a house, and so it was like we had to go through this process, and we have to regulate our nervous system into this trust and into this expansion. And so, I was helping her to stay in alignment through this process of like, okay, so maybe this isn't the right realtor. Maybe the tweak into alignment, it's not about like your heart or desire or your want. It's like surrendering into the control of how it happens and being willing to trust that flow of the alignment, which may just be a windy path instead of the straight path that we want to create. It's like, no, I mean, even that business, whatever it is, it's like, if you're going alone, right, it's like you have a vision for what that looks like, and this end result is in alignment. However, how you're going to get there, like, honestly, it's just really not fully up to you. Like, you're going to be in a meandering path, period. And the more you try and assert like control in getting there, right, like you're also blocking yourself and blocking your flow. And so it's really important when we're talking about alignment, not only be willing to be uncomfortable, but also being willing to like pivot and sidestep and keep moving forward in like just holding that vision and like, okay, so maybe this isn't happening the way I thought or this other person thought, but it still gets to happen in the way spirit is bringing it in the highest alignment, basically. And you just have to ask and follow, like, okay, what's next in the highest alignment, right? And trust that like you receive the vision accurately, or your heart's desires placed there, by your higher self. Like, yes, pursue it. Like, don't stop pursuing it. That's alignment. It's just the road getting there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not always the easiest thing to follow. And they were giggling a little bit at me because, and sometimes when you're in alignment, you're asking for those next steps, you might not get any. That means be patient, right? Just allow whatever's got to come. And they're not going to give you a timeline on that though either, right? It might be a couple of days, it might be a week, it might be 2 weeks. So it's just knowing that not nothing happens in a linear form. Everything is always kind of crisscrossing, matching up in different ways, coming in different ways. And so, yeah, the more you try and control, the more likely you're going to miss the door. And it's not that they won't represent the door over and over and over again to you, because they will, but at the same time, you may be just delaying yourself in actually bringing in whatever you were asking for, or maybe it was a big decision about making a house and you've gotten too caught up in your mind and the overthinking pieces. Overthinking is a type of control as well. And a lot of people forget that, because overthinking thinks that we'll come to a solution if we think about hard enough. And it's just not true. So usually we just feel like we're creating more problems for ourselves when we're overthinking. So being in alignment means, yeah, a lot of different things. It can feel a lot of different ways, but those are those checkpoints. Like you said, you come back to yourself, you come back to how you're feeling. Does it still feel good? Okay, if it's still feeling good or it's still feeling neutral, that's still a meaning you're okay, you're still in alignment. We're just asking you now to have the trust and the faith and knowing that it's coming and that we're bringing it to you. Just stop trying to force the in-between. We promise it'll get there.
Right. Well, and those back to the piece on the checkpoints, like this is why the work is so important, like in the journey getting there to even be where we are. Like I still experience situations where like I just walked through a situation with some beautiful humans where I wasn't fully checking in with my body and my alignment on the daily, and I was kind of like passing off what my body was telling me. My ego is like, oh, that's this thing, or oh, that's that thing, or oh, it's this thing, instead of listening and really tuning in to like and trusting my body is always going to tell me. And then I have like so many resources to help me to decipher, right? And in addition to like, I can go inside and ask and get that guidance, right? And so I just am being vulnerable here because it's like, it doesn't matter who you are or how long you've been doing the work or how connected or how grounded or how in alignment or anything else like that. We all are in a human experience. We all are having this, and it's really a way of being. It's a practice. It's a way of walking in a state of awareness with the tools necessary for you as an individual soul and human. And that, like, my tools look different than Dayna's tools, that look different than the next person's tools, right? Like, to some degree. So, yeah, just know that, like, get comfortable navigating and learning, like learning how to be in that is so important. And also not being hard on yourself around, it's like, okay, you have an experience. Now start looking at how to learn from it, basically, how to pull the wisdom forward. And that is alignment too.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything happens for a reason, for sure, but there's also no end goal. You know, there's never a point where any of us are going to get to this state of, well, this is it, friends. I've hit the end of my road. I've learned all I was supposed to learn here. Because on the day you learned everything you were supposed to learn here, or had your experience that it was meant to be, you will no longer be in your physical body. You will be called home. Because this is an adventure. I always call it an adventure because, you know, they gave me the funniest analogy the other day when I was talking in this reading with these two women that I very thoroughly enjoy when I have sessions with them. Um, they showed me the Jumanji. So, you know, the movie Jumanji, and the newest one, obviously they take the game and they plug it in, right? And they get sucked into the game. And I'm like, that's what this is, friends. Like, we are supposed to get sucked into the game, right? This game might be slightly more intense than Jumanji. You know, we don't exactly get, you know, always the chances of the lifetimes on the arm, right? But at the same point, if you really want to look at it a different perspective, we do in some ways, right? You do know the people that should have died in that car accident and they didn't, right? We do get these chances sometimes to wake us up hard enough to start playing a different game than following the rules of what was kind of set out for us. So I like to refer it as the adventure. And a part of that adventure is learning different skills, having the self-awareness, starting to play a different game for ourselves. And alignment can bring us to that different game. It brings us to a place of co-creation. And I think that's kind of what one of the biggest purposes all of us as humans are here doing, is to learn, grow, and start playing a different game, calling it co-creation instead of just following the train.
I'm so laughing. I feel like we have to end this episode leaving people with these images of like monkeys taking over their town. And what, like the first movie, there were like all these animals in their house. I can't even, like lions and with like alligators.
Crocodile and
Yeah, yeah. Like it so feels like that sometimes, right? Like, and we
absolutely.
get to laugh about it. We get to be sarcastic about it. We get to be all the range of things about it. And yeah, I don't know. Are you having anything else drop in?
No, I'm not actually. I think this will be one of our shorter episodes. We're just going to leave it at that because it just feels so, what a great way to leave it. So we thank you again for coming and joining us on this one. You got questions about alignment, you want to come join our community, there's links in the descriptions, there's links on the podcast. We have quite a wicked deal going on for the first people that are going to come in. So I apologize if you're listening to this later and that deal is gone, but come and check it out, my friends. We are extremely excited to start offering. We've got it all detailed out in the form. So if you're curious about what we're doing or how we're doing it, click on that form, take a look at it. And if you're wanting to sign up, sign up. We're super stoked to get people doing this.
Yeah, and Thursday night, are we still doing a Facebook Live Q&A as well?
Yes, but we're going to mention, like, again, if you're listening to this later on, we are in March of 2024 at the moment. We are talking about this coming up Thursday. We will be doing a live on Facebook. So if you are listening to this before Thursday, come and join us. We're really excited to answer some questions. I'm getting shown pulling maybe some cards, doing some visualizations, some stuff like that as well. So you got questions about anything, questions about the community, come join us. And we're really looking forward to having you there.
And although that's happening this Thursday, that's actually going to be happening monthly. So if you don't catch it this month, then it's available next month. So just keep an eye out for it if it's something you want to be a part of.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us.